It is time once again to talk some freaking smack. And the best way to talk smack is with Bob and Jack. What's going on, Jack Windsor? How are you, brother?
Bob, I'm living my best life, man. You know, it's Monday. It's super fantastic. February 6th, rocking and rolling.
Yeah, you feeling good about the state of the United States right now? The State of the Union is going to be coming up. It's on Tuesday. You feeling good about that? You feel like we're strong nation right now? I don't know. Don't let the background behind me be any influence to your answer, but what do you think?
Well, I think that's a lagging indicator. I don't need to listen to stumbling, bumbling, fumbling Joe Biden to figure out where we are in the United States of America. We're in a crisis, and we've been in a crisis since he took office. Now, man, it's been one thing after another, and the list honestly is too long. But the latest debacle is the Chinese weather balloon that essentially flew across the entire United States before it was shot down.
Well, let's be clear about that. The dude behind me called it a weather balloon. It was a meteorological observation tool that just floated off course. That's all it was. It was a spy craft. Let's be 100% honest here. And we're going to start with that. I've got some really strong thoughts on it. I'm going to let you go first. But let's remind everybody, or tell everybody, rather, what's coming up here when we're done picking apart the Chinese and Joe Biden's response to it, Jack.
Well, first of all, am I surprised that it played out the way that it did? No. I mean,
no. What I was asking you to do is tell everybody what's coming up after we do this. We got a guest waiting for us here.
What's coming up after? Well, first of all, before I get into that, Bob, let me start by saying this, that tonight's episode is brought to you by the Freedom Foundation. Now, the Freedom Foundation is the creator of optouttoday.com. That's the #1 tool to free government employees from union bondage. So if you go over to freedomfoundation.com, you can learn more, and you can also make a 501c3 tax-deductible donation. Now, when you do that, they'll double it if you put Talkin' Smack in the notes. So thank you to the Freedom Foundation. And then we are going to talk to Mike Gibbons. Now, if that name sounds familiar, that's because he was leading the 2022 GOP U.S. Senate primary race before Donald Trump weighed in and endorsed J.D. Vance, who eventually not only won the primary, but won the general election over career politician Tim Ryan. So we're going to have investment banker and financial guru Mike Gibbons with us to talk a little bit of smack.
Yeah, and political pundit now that he's no longer a candidate, he's allowed to weigh on politics, and he weighs in very, very well. So Mike Gibbons, I'm looking forward to that. So we are going to talk to Mike after we talk about our top story, which is indeed that giant balloon and the dictator of the Chinese Communist Party behind me. Go ahead, Jack. You go first.
Well, to me, it's really simple. To believe that this would have played out any differently, I think you would have had to have a seismic shift in what's happened in this country between the time that we horribly screwed up pulling out of the Middle East, okay, and go forward. We've completely screwed up everything since then. But the part that's really interesting to me is that my understanding is this balloon came in from Trudeau's communist Canada via China. And didn't it start? Where did it start? Let me make sure I have this.
It came in over Alaska. Came in over Alaska first.
But it was spotted in Montana. What do we have in Montana, Bob? Do you know the answer to that question?
Well, first of all, we have ballistic missile bases there. Number 1,
nuclear missile silo fields.
Yes. Oh, and I was about to say, and we also have a whole hell of a lot of empty space, which is where, I don't know, shooting a spy balloon down and not having to worry about it hitting anything other than maybe a stray caribou or some crap is about the only thing you had to worry about there. But of course, they didn't do that. I'm sorry. Continue.
No, so it goes from Montana all the way down to through South Carolina, and then it's shot down. Well, that's interesting because, first of all, it was in American airspace. Why the hell did it take us so long to shoot it down? I'm going to go back to what I've talked about a gazillion times since we've started this podcast. Joe Biden is compromised. He's compromised in Ukraine because of Hunter's dealings with Burisma and the oligarchs there. He's also compromised in China, where, can you imagine that Hunter Biden has contracts with Chinese companies that are, part and parcel with the communist Chinese government. So that balloon went across the United States of America. What did it collect? What did it do? I don't know, but it's horrifying to think that it took us as long as it took us to shoot it down.
Well, you're right about Montana. There's ICBM silos there. That's extraordinarily important. And to be honest with you, as long as that thing floated over American airspace, which was about a week, because we found out Joe Biden was first made aware of the existence of this balloon over American airspace. At the time, it was just Alaska, but over American airspace last Saturday, the 28th. He did nothing on Sunday, the 29th, or Monday, the 30th. Or Tuesday the 31st, or Wednesday the 1st. Well, now he tells us just a few days ago that after they shot it down on Saturday, this past Saturday, he said, oh, I told the Pentagon they should shoot that down back on Wednesday. And when I first found out about it, he lied. It's not when he first found out about it. He found out about it last week. So for 7 days, they did nothing. And even if you buy his, I told the Pentagon to shoot it down, quote, when it was safe to do so, to keep everybody on the ground safe. That would have been Wednesday. They still didn't shoot it down until Saturday, until it completed its mission. Bingo. To traverse the entire continental United States, gathering whatever intel it wanted on whatever bases, whatever silos, anything that it wanted. And make no mistake, we can zoom in and probably read the timer on any of the equipment that are on that thing, even at 60, 70,000 feet in the air. Between satellites from above and telescopes from the ground, we can zoom right in on it. We know exactly what it was. We know exactly what its capabilities were. And they let it finish its job anyway, then shot it down over the ocean. And by the way, tonight, just tonight, I saw a newscast that U.S. Navy vessels are trying to recover. They're trying to recover some of the debris. How in the flying freaking hell is the United States Pentagon so incompetent that the United States can't coordinate an airstrike on that balloon at the same time they have ships in the ocean?
So I can tell you.
As soon as it lands, we scoop up all that debris and learn everything we can about that, that craft and about that equipment. How is it 3 days later and we're just now trying to recover the debris? Yes, I'll pick you, Jack.
Diversity, inclusion, and equity. Because, Bob, until we are socially and emotionally astute and aware with our military, the world is in grave danger.
Yeah. That's and you know what, Jack? I mean, I'm just so livid about the fact. I mean, you and I do sports and have done sports. So the metaphor here is, tight ball game. We lose by, tight or not, but we lose a basketball game by 8 points. And after everybody goes home, Joe Biden's going to step outside the 3-point line and hit a 3-pointer. It's the gym's empty. The game's over. Mission has been accomplished. And that's what shooting that plane down over the Atlantic Ocean does. After you allowed it to traverse the entirety of the United States and collect all of its data. The game is over then. The Chinese won. Jack, this wasn't a weather balloon. And you can call it a spy balloon, but I like what Tom Cotton called it in the United States Senate. It's a trial balloon. This was a test. Yep. Of the United States of America. What is our resolve when they violate American airspace, our sovereign airspace, and violate international law and send that thing over us for over a week? They wanted to see what we would do. Now they know. And you know who the hell else knows what we would do with an aggressive action like that? Every other enemy of the United States. Vladimir Putin, and I know he's preoccupied right now, North Korea, Iran. All of our enemies know that the United States right now is too damn weak to do anything about a violation of our sovereign airspace. So this is a huge, huge moment. And I talked to J.D. Vance, Senator Vance, this morning on my radio program. And he said history books may very well record this balloon, this spy craft, and it's floating over the United States for 7 days, and our eventual shooting down over the water and so on and so forth as the beginning moments of an escalation into a new Cold War with the Chinese. God forbid, he said, that it ever become a hot war. And I completely agree, because we are completely unprepared in our woke, weak, underperforming, missing recruitment standards, missing retention standards, military. We are in no way, shape, or form ready to handle the Chinese machine. And God forbid we end up there.
No, but you know what? We have a lot of men and women in uniform who are sympathetic to biological men who want to pretend to be biological women, and vice versa. Who's your daddy, Joe? Who's your daddy? Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping is
That's
his
who
daddy.
your daddy is.
There's no question about it.
And by the way, Bob, real quick, has China done anything terrible in the last decade? I mean, they're pretty upstanding, right? I mean, they're
other than murdering millions of Uyghur Muslims and putting them in concentration camps, and because
that.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's that coronavirus that they didn't really give honest information about when it was let go.
They released a gain-of-function pathogen, a dangerous contagion that they created in a lab with gain-of-function research on the rest of the world, killing millions.
So we should probably trust that it was a weather balloon, though, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let me tell you something before we get to Mike Gibbons. I asked my audience today, and I'll ask Talkin Smack audience members too. You can answer in the comment sections as you live wherever it is that you're going to listen and watch this. I said, would you, if you were a military age male right now, would you be enlisting in the United States military to prepare for war with China? Because I will tell you something. I've got a military age son, and there's no way I want him going anywhere near. And God bless our heroes who put on the uniform, but in this military, that's suicide. Until we get a military that is run by military men and not by Mark Milley, a general who warned the Chinese while Donald Trump was president, had an illegal conversation with the Chinese military or his counterpart in China saying, if Trump, this madman, this unpredictable nut, Donald Trump, decides to launch anything at you, I will call you and give a heads up. Literally told our enemy that he would give them a warning if we were going to do any kind of a preemptive strike against them for whatever reason. Not that that was ever even a possibility, but if that's the guy running our military or one of them, along with Lloyd Austin, with all of the stuff you were just talking about, there's no way in hell I would want, there's a reason why the retention and the recruitment numbers are so low. Nobody wants to be a part of this military. And I wouldn't want to see my son being next to some of those Uyghur Muslims in a Chinese concentration camp when it's all said and done. So,
well, I think the moral of that story is you better invest in melatonin and Unisom, because I have trouble sleeping at night for the reasons that you just named. It's an incredible world that we live in. Yeah.
Jack, you want to bring our guest in?
I'd love to. So Mike Gibbons, he ran for U.S. Senate in 2018 and 2022. Now in 22, he led the race late, heading into the May primary, but saw the position fade after former President Donald J. Trump endorsed his opponent, who is now the U.S. Senator, J.D. Vance. Now, Gibbons grew up in Parma, Ohio, in a working class neighborhood on the southern edge of Cleveland. And if you've ever heard him, he has some very compelling stories about his dad, Gene Gibbons, who is a legend, high school teacher and wrestling coach. And he worked a second job to support his family. And Mike often talks about the impression that his dad left with him. Today, Mike Gibbons, who grew up in that humble neighborhood, is the father of 5 children. He's the managing senior director of Gibbons, Lang & Company. They are an international investment bank and financial advisory that he created in 1989, my understanding, above a dental office with a phone and a desk. And right now, they are one of the premier companies in the world in their space. So without further ado, I want to welcome Mr. Mike Gibbons to Talkin Smack with Bob and Jack. Mike, are you there?
He is apparently getting on. We're hearing from our producer who is behind the scenes. Whitney tells us that they are making the connection right now to our podcast with Mike Gibbons. So we'll bring him on when we can. And, before we start talking about Ohio politics and obviously the Senate race that he was in that led to J.D. Vance, you kind of introduced earlier on. There he is. That's Mike Gibbons. Before we get into all that, we're going to ask him about the Chinese situation as well. He didn't like that headphone, I can tell. Hey, Mike, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How are you, good sir? Yep, you sound just fine. How you doing, sir?
Good.
Good. Hey, Mike, we want to talk about your new role in the Ohio Republican Party and in the Cuyahoga County Republican Party, and as a finance chair, we want to talk about Ohio politics, but we'd be remiss. You ran for United States Senate, obviously, in that primary, and if you had won instead of JD, you'd be on talk shows right now talking about Well, you see my background. You see the balloon and Xi Jinping.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I figured let's get your thoughts on that. What is your reaction to what down? That thing floated over the continental U.S. for about 7 days before it was finally shot down after it had already completed its mission. Your thoughts?
Well, I think they're just kind of testing us. But I will tell you, I don't know what it is. We may find out it's a weather balloon. I don't know. I don't believe anything out of the Biden administration. So how do we know? And they must not have thought it was some kind of a nuclear weapon or whatever, or they would have shot it down long ago, because now they've been talking about how it could be carrying explosives. I don't know what it is. I don't like the idea of China having anything over our borders. I think we should have shot it down a long time ago when we discovered it. But I'm going to be anxious to see what it really is.
Yeah, and that's I agree with you. It should have been shot down a long time ago. I think they've been able to zoom in on it well enough to know full well what it is. It surveilled some very important U.S. sites. It's got camera and other satellite type surveillance capability. So
Yeah.
the fact is, they tried to say it's a weather balloon blew off course. It was totally navigable. It was actually being navigated and managed. So and like Jack was just saying before you came on, Chinese have such a great reputation for honesty, right? Telling us what
Right.
happened with the Wuhan flu, and so yeah, believing that it's a weather balloon. I'm not going to go there. But,
Well, the only thing that maybe I think they're smarter than that. But I mean, we're going to be able to, once we dig this out of the water, we're going to find out exactly what it is, and then they're going to look like liars, and we should make sure everybody knows what it is. But maybe they're stupid and they think anything they say can be believed. I don't know.
well, yeah. Just last thing before we get into the other stuff, Mike. I was telling Jack before. I am baffled as to why they sink this thing or shoot this thing down with a sidewinder missile, virtually guaranteeing everything in it is destroyed. You can recover nothing of it to learn from it, see what their capabilities are. It's a balloon. Why not use gunfire? Why not just gunfire, deflate it, let it sink into the ocean, and have Navy ships waiting down below to immediately get the debris and pull it on board and start studying it? It's 3 days later, Mike Gibbons, and they're just now, I saw it on Fox tonight, they're just now in the quote-unquote shallow waters off of the coast of South Carolina trying to recover debris. Where the hell were you Saturday when it went down? Our military can't coordinate that?
After Afghanistan, would you expect anything else?
No, sadly, no, I wouldn't. All right, Jack, I'll get off the subject. Jack, you want to take us into somewhere else? Yeah.
Hey, Whitney, please put up that Cleveland.com headline. I want to lead off there. And by the way, Mr. Gibbons, welcome. It's good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us tonight. There it is.
There we go. I like that.
Yeah, so Mike Gibbons bankrolled his U.S. Senate campaign. Now he's spending to punish Republicans who worked with Dems to choose Ohio's new House Speaker. Now, Mr. Gibbons, Cleveland.com really kind of took the focus off Ohio Strong Action, which is a PAC that supported your Senate race, and they made it appear that you're trying to.
It did not support my. It's a federal PAC. We're going to convert it to a state PAC, but it was a state PAC. We're going to convert it to a federal PAC.
Copy.
But this was to support conservatives when I didn't think I was going to run. And,
Gotcha.
And it had nothing to do with me. It couldn't really. And, and I pretty much funded that too. We got some donations, but I, as you may or may not know, I don't like to call people and ask them for money. And if they give me money, I don't like to owe anybody anything. And that's kind of why I gave up on the traditional way of running for office.
Well, thank you for that clarification. I think it's really important. And the PAC, though, has some objectives, but Cleveland.com kind of made it appear that you're trying to punish Ohio Speaker Jason Stevens and that band of 21 who voted for him. But my conversations with you and some folks in the PAC lead me to believe that you're really not about revenge, but about conservative public policy.
Well, revenge for what? I mean, I don't have anything against these people.
Bingo.
But you know what? I was a proud.
I do.
Well, you do now. Maybe I do now.
Well, let me ask it this way, Mike.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Let me ask it this way, Mike.
All right,
Well, I didn't have anything against these people, but I mean, there's no personal revenge here. I have no axe to grind.
Well,
You know, I don't care if they elect Homer Simpson as the Speaker of the House. I really don't. I think it's not, for me. It's not about people. It's about the agenda. And if they indeed attempt, this state elected a supermajority of Republicans. Why? Mm-hmm. Not to get Democrat policies. And I think if they attempt to circumvent the actions of the 45 or 44 good Republicans in their pursuit of a conservative agenda in this session with a supermajority, we'll be a nightmare for them. And I think we should be. I think that's what they should expect. The problem is, and we probably should talk about this, is this was all engineered by a bunch of lobbyists. And the story I've heard, and again, I can't verify it, but I'm going to tell you what I heard. I heard that when Derek Marin won, he went to the lobbyists that weren't supportive of him, or the people that were supporting the people that weren't supportive of him, and said it's going to be a pretty lean couple of years for you guys. And they said, "Whoa, we don't want it to be a lean couple of years for us. Maybe we ought to do something about it." There was reasons why this happened, and I think it had to do. I think what we don't understand is we always talk about our federal government being run by the deep state. We kind of have our own deep state here in Ohio, and there are a bunch of lobbyists. And I'm hoping as this goes on, those people's names will come out. Hopefully, people will be embarrassed to deal with them and take money from them. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Because that's the easy way of raising funding, because everybody gets paid. Then the lobbyist gets paid, the candidate gets paid, and then they do the lobbyist bidding. And that's what's going on here. And I think, we need to, you guys need to dig into that. You guys do a good job of digging into a lot of stuff, but you got to have some of these lobbyists come on, and I'll get you a list of the guys that are guilty.
Well, I think I have an inclination of who some of those who may be in some of those lobbying firms. I've heard a lot about labor. I've heard a lot about nursing homes. But let me ask you this, and I think you did a really good job of just explaining. You really don't. Teachers unions. You did a really good job of explaining it's not about the person, it's about the principle. So, revenge isn't what you desire. I hear that loud and clear. But what do you plan to do then to achieve the objectives that Ohio's strong action might have? And then Bob, I know, wants to ask some hard questions, but what are your objectives, Mike, with Ohio strong action? What do you intend to do?
My objectives are to pass the agenda that I was very proud as an Ohio Republican when I saw the results of the House race and the Senate race in this state. The agenda we expected to pass, we need to protect our Constitution. We need to defend life. We have a very important bill we're trying to get before both houses to divide the various metropolitan districts or the various metropolitan voting areas into districts for judge elections, for judicial elections. That's a very important bill. We're being kind of overrun. We don't have a chance in Cuyahoga County of electing a Republican judge, and that's not right. And we believe that there should be districts set up. We're going to propose that. We need to protect women's sports. I have a daughter that played college athletics, and I've got a son-in-law that played for the Cleveland Browns. And I don't think they should be on the field at the same time. Competing against one another. I think that we need to give parents the control of what their kids are learning in school. I want to see a backpack bill. I want them to have a choice to send their kids to a school that is actually going to teach them the 3 R's and not try to indoctrinate them into some Marxist offbeat philosophy.
Now, Mike, what I think I just heard then was, and I'm going to kind of put it into specific policy, raising the voter approval threshold for state constitutional amendments to 60%, promoting parent choice for their kids in education, opposing abortion, and defending women's sports. Now, outside of defending women's sports, which I think will come across, and I think Stevens et al. Will do a victory lap, it appears to me, based on my conversations, that part of Stevens' deal with Democrats, which, by the way, that's who elected him speaker. It wasn't Republicans, it was Democrats, that he made deals that are going to kill those first three initiatives. So what do you do about that? And what do Ohioans do about that?
We find somebody to replace him in 2 years, and then we support that person. And we do an extra special job of getting that done. And I'm ready to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. And I think we have a number of other people. We had a meeting in Upper Sandusky a couple of weeks ago, and that's what we vowed to do. If these people are not going to take away what we thought we already had, and we had it because the people of Ohio gave it to us, and we need it. It was our ability to get the things that we want as conservatives passed, and they're not going to take it away. And if they do, they won't be in office the next time around. Now, I don't want to threaten them, but that's, I guess, somewhat of a threat, and I think they better think long and hard before they decide. Now, when I hear Republicans saying, it's undemocratic to have a 60% cutoff on the Constitution, where have they been their whole lives? I mean, did they not read, the debates on the Constitution? Don't they understand that the tyranny of the majority is what our founders were most frightened of? And it's, I don't think we're going to, this state will not support a complete ban on abortion. I know that. But it also, I don't believe, will support a total lack of any controls on abortion. And the problem is because of the 60%, we're going to get a Planned Parenthood bill that I'm afraid is going to be, something akin to the California bill, where the birth mother's allowed to commit infanticide 60 days after they're born because you don't like the way it looks or something. It's we can't let that happen. And these guys have put us in the position where it could.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say one thing, Bob. Oh, go ahead. You go.
No, that's all right.
No, I was just going to say one thing. We're hearing a lot of, 24 weeks with lots of loopholes. If mom feels like she's going to be depressed, and even if baby's healthy and she's healthy, she can kill the kid in the womb. We're also hearing that it might include fundamental rights for biological boys that want to identify as girls and vice versa. But all of that is happening because Jason Stevens did zip since January 3rd to move a resolution across the finish line in the House that could have put on the ballot the opportunity of people to decide if they want a 60% threshold in order to pass a constitutional amendment. Bob, over to you. I know you have something to add there.
Well, let Mike respond to it. You asked it.
Well, I mean, I think, you saw Brent Larkin come out and say this is anti-democratic. The problem is we have Americans that don't understand what a democracy is versus a republic. This is not a majoritarian nation, because that doesn't work. We wouldn't be around right now and have the oldest republic existing in the world right now if we had a majoritarian decision on everything. I mean, first of all, Jim Crow probably wouldn't be over if we had a majoritarian decision on that sort of thing. We have to work within the Constitution. We have to protect a large minority, which is exactly what we have, because I'd be willing to get we would have 35%, 30% that would want a complete ban on abortion. We probably have another 20 that wants a good bit of number of restrictions or close to that. And we probably have a little bit over 50% that if they don't have another option, will vote for no ban at all. And we that's not the kind of decision you leave up to the majority. And everybody says, well, 42% of the or 40% of the state is now going to decide what they want. No, but what they're going to do is decide what they absolutely don't want, because we don't need that kind of division. And that's what our founders instilled in our federal Constitution. It's a 66 2/3. We don't want a constitutional amendment for the same thing coming up every 2 years, and it will ad infinitum, because there's it's a waste of our money, it's a waste of our time, and it's well within the political philosophy of this country to have a 60% cutoff for amendments. They've tied it to abortion, but I'm looking at virtually anything. Right down the line, I think it should be 60%. Because if 40% is opposed, it ought to be a real trouble getting it through. In fact, it ought to be prevented.
Mike, you're saying we're not going to let them do this to us. We're not going to let them stop this conservative agenda that you outlined there almost point by point. They already have. Because there's a headline right now in this news publication that I'm aware of called the Ohio Press Network. Jack, you ever heard of that one? It's called the Ohio Press Network.
Rings a bell.
There's a headline that says, as anticipated, Speaker Stevens fails to move Ohio Constitutional Protection Amendment forward. It's already not going to be on the May ballot. Now we're looking at November, maybe. And we don't know if that's going to happen because of the unholy marriage, the union between these 22 trans Dems and Democrats. And I'm going to call them trans Democrats because that's what they identify as. Yeah. If you're going to wear an R in your chest, but you're going to dance around like a darn Democrat, then that's what you are. And I want to treat them like that. Mike, I am livid. I have never seen a weaker, more feckless freaking party with a supermajority that they piss down their legs like the state of Ohio's Republican Party has in my life. We can't even get censorships together in the biggest counties in the gosh darn state. Hamilton County let Bill Seitz scream and yell at everybody into intimidating them into not censoring these 22 trans Dems. We're sitting there sending crap to a disciplinary committee in Cuyahoga County, and we got a handful, Jack, 6-7 counties that pass censures. When are we going to start standing up for the 5 million Ohio Republicans and conservatives that are represented by those 22 turncoats who said we're going to give power to the super minority Democrat Party? The super minorities are going to choose the speaker. The super minorities are going to kill our conservative slate of legislation. The super minorities are going to do that all so we can get what? Power. Jason Stevens gave all 21 of them plum primary committee positions in exchange for stabbing Derek Marin, the 45, and all of the rest of the Ohio Republicans in the freaking back. Mike, I want asses. I want asses held to account. I'm tired of playing with these people. I'm tired of pretending they're on our side. They're not.
Well, I detect that you feel strongly about this, Bob. And I also do. But it isn't going to be yelling. It isn't going to be screaming. It is going to be.
Now you tell me.
Well, it's going to be a fun.
Bob, you missed the memo.
I love you, Bob. And
I love you too, Mike. But you understand my point here? No, we gave control. We had a 67-seat supermajority. There's nothing they could have done to stop the backpack bill, the Save Women's Sports Act, the constitutional amendment, all of the things you just outlined. They couldn't have stopped. And Mike DeWine couldn't even have stopped it because of the supermajority. He couldn't even have vetoed it. And now here we are picking our asses because we can't get it done now that we gave the Democrats as much of a say, more of a say when you combine them with the 22 trans Dems than the 45.
I agree. And we are going, I'm telling you, we've assembled a group of people that are going to do something about it. And I'm not going to give you all the details or, I'd rather have them not see it coming, but it's begun. I don't know if you've seen the signage that's up. I frankly, if Stevens doesn't come around, he's going to have signs up and down his own street by the time we get done. Explaining to a very
what does come around mean, Mike?
Explain
what can you get done here? Like, what do you want to get done?
So far, he hasn't gotten
them around.
He hasn't gotten the constitutional amendment limitation change, but he has until December to do that. We'll give him around until November to get that done. He will get that done, or we will be after him. Everything I outlined, he is going to pursue. Now, they will tell you. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this Rule 54, Rule 56, whatever it is. He now is an absolute dictator. He can push anything he wants to into the Rules Committee, and it dies. If it dies in the Rules Committee, he's going to be real sorry that he did that. And I can tell you, we have a lot of people with a lot of wealth, and a lot of people that believe in conservative principles, and a lot of people that feel that we saw traitors literally walk away from the supermajority that this state gave us, and we're not going to let it happen. And
Mike, when they pushed that rule through the rules, though, when he did that last week, and then he ignored all amendments. He ignored all amendments. He wouldn't listen to Josh Williams or anybody else about anything. When he pushed that through, giving himself, like you said, Rule 54, the right to basically kill any piece of legislation and not let it come up for a vote, that means he became a dictator at that moment. You used the word yourself. How do we flip that? How does that get undone? I don't care.
Yes,
I mean, you might be a very you're a very what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a guy. You're very
great negotiator.
You're influential, but I mean, how do you take a guy who just grabbed that kind of tyrannical power and say, give it back?
Well, he can only be there 2 years, then, less than 2 years. He should be counting the days, because we have people that will be relentless, and you're looking at one of them. We're going to give speeches. We're going to knock on doors. We're going to send out mailers. We're going to put up signs. This is good. We're going to go at this as if it's a campaign from the day he doesn't do the first thing that he should have done. We're going to let her rip, and we will raise a substantial amount of money from conservative people in this state to make this an effort that will be unprecedented. All I can tell you is we've already had, Bob, I don't have time to do this, and I've set aside too many things to put this kind of effort in. But I ran for office because I wanted to help change America and begin to have them remember what got us here, and it was conservative principles. And liberal principles had never worked. We'd watched them on display. For years now, nothing works, and they double down when it goes wrong with even more. And look at our crime. Look at what's going on in this country. Look at inflation. Inflation's not gone. We've seen a dip in it, but you don't kick out 8% inflation in 2 or 3 months. They don't learn, and it's time that people put their money where their mouth is. And it's time that they get up and off their couches and get out and help achieve what we need to achieve. What's going on in the schools is outrageous. The teachers are even flaunting it. They're saying, we trick the parents. We do whatever we want to do.
Every big city in the state, they're saying that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Mike,
it's got to end.
Mike, I don't know if you caught this today, but the Ohio Press Network, the Ohio Star, published a feature story. Toledo Cleveland school administrators admit to deceiving parents and promoting critical race theory in Ohio classrooms. And actually, I want to point to one. Rick McIntosh, director of school choice, Cleveland Metro, and then also Keith Ahern, superintendent of Fairview Park City Schools, says that his district teaches to state standards, but because those standards are so broad, they can slip this stuff into social studies, and frankly, they're going to try to keep it under the radar. I mean, how do you react to that?
Well, I live in Fairview.
Yes, I do. That's why I asked the question.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't have any kids in school anymore. My daughter teaches at Westlake.
They're in that story too, by the way.
Yeah, I know they are. I read the story, and I think I can do more in Fairview by with conversation and that sort of thing. I don't think people are aware of this. And a lot of people, let's face it, a very high percentage of voters in this state and across the United States, they don't know anything about what's going on. They don't want to. I mean, when you can talk to people and they say, I want nothing to do with politics. I don't want any, it's going to take it costing them something. And by the way, it's going to cost them in ways that may be too late by the time they get involved. It's our job, I think, to have them listen, to have them try to make them understand what's going on. But if you're 74 years old and your kids are older and your kids have all moved to New York or LA or whatever they move to now, all you care about is keeping your real estate taxes low. And we have to get more people engaged. We are being overrun with a leftist agenda right now, and they're bold about it. I'm surprised instead of calling themselves progressives, they just don't say, "Fine, we're Marxists." We've adopted the Marxist philosophy.
They have.
Let's just call ourselves what we are, because
Mike,
they don't care.
Let me ask you a personal question.
Yeah.
Your daughter is not on trial here. I don't know your daughter,
Right.
but I'm just want to ask you: is she like Dad? Is she conservative minded, or is she
Bob,
not non-political?
She's married to Aaron Shea.
Okay.
She's as conservative.
Former Michigan tight end, former Cleveland Brown. Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
She's as conservative as I am.
Okay. The reason I ask is because
I
of
raised
what you.
my kids a certain way. Now I've got one that's a little older than Caitlin, that's out in Chicago. We had kind of a conversation this weekend about this sort of stuff, and I said, you're kind of a Democrat, and she said, please don't call me that.
Well, the reason I'm asking about your daughter in Westlake, Mike, is because of what Jack just mentioned in the article. According to Stephanie Morgan, Director of Student Services at Westlake, Ohio School District, social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion are all in their district's curriculum. So I'm curious, how does your daughter handle that as a conservative, knowing what diversity, inclusion, and equity are, knowing what they do, knowing what they mean, knowing what CRT does? How does she handle that as a conservative? Is she able to just set her ideology aside and follow whatever the administrators tell her to do, or does she get into a pushing match with them, or what?
First of all, she's an English teacher, and she teaches 8th grade. And and by the way, she has a master's from Columbia Teachers College. So she went and got trained by the commies. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she would never teach that stuff because she didn't believe it, but she has never had it presented to her.
Okay.
And I have a sister that teaches at Lincoln West, and I keep saying, "Hey, Pat, get me some of this CRT stuff so I can show it to people," because I got interviewed down in Columbus by this Colleen
Marshall.
Colleen Marshall, and she said, "Mike, name one city where they're teaching CRT." And I said, and I always have trouble calling it CRT, because I've actually gone back and researched how this whole thing came about, and they can deflect the conversation because it's not really critical race theory. It's diversity, inclusion, and it's this theory that it's postmodernism, of course, but that we are, if you're white, you're an oppressor, and if you're black, you're oppressed, and they teach all this stuff, and they don't call it CRT.
That's right.
And when you say that you teach CRT, they said, no, we don't. That's a legal theory. It is written by some idiot at Harvard that got his law degree from on some.
Well, critical theory was written by an idiot named Karl Marx. Just to be clear, critical theory itself, whether it's critical, the modifier is in the middle. Critical theory is Marxist, period. And it is indeed designed to divide, as you just said, oppressors from the oppressed, based on categories and characteristics that may be out of the control of the individuals. That's how they divide and conquer. So critical theory is Marxist in its nature. Critical race theory can be taught without actually calling it a class called critical race theory. They just use the elements of it within the day-to-day lives in these schools. That's why they're all being forced to admit, yeah, this is how we get away with it.
Well, that's true. But my point is, I said Cleveland teaches CRT, and then they followed up with, we checked on what Mr. Gibbons said about Cleveland, and we called them and asked them, do they teach CRT? And they said, no, we don't. I would say I was.
Oh, there it is.
Wow,
cut and dried. No,
it's a weather balloon. Okay. It's a weather balloon.
That's exactly like I got 4 Pinocchios from the Washington Post when I said Sherrod Brown was a Marxist. And they said, we called the Sherrod Brown office and asked him if Sherrod Brown was a Marxist. Said, no, he wasn't.
That is the best bit of investigative journalism I've ever seen in my life. Wow, these guys are stellar.
Oh my God.
No, I mean, it's the fact that almost everything comes out of his mouth has some Marxist origin does not ring with their. But they aren't facing it. My sister does not have does not get materials that tells her what to teach, and she does not teach critical race theory or any type of
what happens to Mike? I mean, I don't know if you've had these conversations with her or not, though. What happens when she is faced with it? What happens when they get the first, trans kids in her classes and they're talking, you better call me they, them, or XM or X or whatever the made up crap that they want to do. She's going to have to do that to be, quote, inclusive, with diversity, inclusion, and equity being big parts of the Westlake schools. She's going to have to do it, or she's going to face discipline. She's going to face problems, So, and again, I don't mean to single out your daughter. Any teacher that doesn't believe in that nonsense is in for a fight, or they're going to lose their jobs. And I wonder how they handle it.
I mean, my solution is fire all those teachers that want to impose that, because, there is no scientific evidence at all that took gender dysphoria from a psychosis to some wonderful thing that happens to certain children, because that's what's happened. And it was a bunch of, social rejects that wrote a theory that we should be taking, and it's now been instituted in every one of our hospitals, every one of our healthcare services, every one of our schools. Mm-hmm. These people's lives are going to be hell. 85% of them decide that they're really not transgender after they say they are.
That's right.
As they go through puberty. And this is what we have. We have foolishness. We have no common sense. We have the inmates running the asylum right now. And that's why the thing we want to accomplish, as I said, I spent a lot of dough. I spent a lot of time. I detest politicians that go into political business to make money. I hate it. I think any politician that goes in should come out with a lower net worth. And it's a sacred obligation that they do that.
Yeah. Donald Trump did that.
He damn right did a lot. He came out with a lot of less net worth.
Yeah.
And I accept that, and I expected that. And you've heard me give the speech, Bob. I have a son that's a Navy pilot, and he made me ashamed because I had never given what he's giving every day now. And I said, and I tried to get a job in the Trump administration. I couldn't do it with the situation I'm in, or I didn't want to change the name of my firm. We're, known throughout the world now, and you just don't throw that away. And that's how I ended up running. And I don't want to run anymore. I haven't made a final decision on the Senate race, but I can tell you, I do want to do this. I do want to spend a good bit of my time trying to make sure what I believe in, and which I think the vast majority of Ohio believes in, actually gets enacted. And I'm not going to rest. And you guys are incredibly helpful. A lot more people listen to you than will ever listen to me. And you got to keep it up. We need to beat these guys, because these guys are destroying our country.
Well, and they're doing it in subtle ways. I want to jump in real quick, Mike, and I want to give you a story, an example. And I don't know if you've heard Bob and I talk about this before. Bob, this is like the third time you've heard it, so I apologize. But I think it's important to remind our viewers. So my daughter's in Olentangy Local School District, which is the fourth largest in the state of Ohio. And let me tell you how this critical race theory, social emotional learning, comprehensive sexual education, transgender activism, it creeps in. Social justice. Here's how it creeps in. One subtle way. They have sessions with guidance counselors every 2 weeks. And just a few weeks back, there was a handout. And on that handout, it talked about a boy who plays basketball, who didn't want to play basketball. He wanted to be in theater. And so he went and was in the show choir or theater, and felt really angry because a lot of his basketball buddies were upset because he wanted to quit the team. And they said, how are we going to win a championship without you? You're the best player. Long story short, what they tried to do was, and I understand empathy. Empathy is a great thing, but they tried to present it as, well, let's be empathetic. This guy, his identity isn't as a basketball player. It's being in the show choir. And then it went on to talk about, now this is the critical part. It went on to talk about the Children's Bill of Rights. The Children's Bill of Rights, which includes the right to your own identity, which includes the right to feel and think and do things a certain way, which frankly, you do have a right under the First Amendment to freedom of speech and religious freedom. But what starts to happen in schools is they teach that as a foundation. And then they teach you, not only is it okay to have those things, but if you don't support somebody else that is transgender or progressive in their ideology, then you're violating their Children's Bill of Rights. You're violating their constitutional amendment. And that's how they bring it in. They do it subtly. They do it through these, we're all going to sit around the carpet and listen to the guidance counselor type of thing. It scares the hell out of me. And so even if there's not critical race theory, right, if there's not a book they pull down off the shelf and open up, this is how subtly it gets into the minds of our kids. And they do it, it's long-term, it's spaced repetition over years. So I digress.
Well,
but I just wanted to
I'm
point
involved with an organization that you guys should get to know called Values in Action. And we are the ones that's responsible for all these kindland signs and kindness, being mentioned all over the place. Be kind to one another. And what I determined was, if everybody was kind to one another, we wouldn't need any social emotional learning. The fact that somebody wants to be transgender is up to them. I don't even want to know about it. It's not my business. But I will tell you this. I think they don't have a right to their own identity until they're 18 years old. And if their parents don't want them walking around with a dress on, if they're a biological boy, their parents have the right to tell them not to. And it may be, it may get a little hairy there for a while, but if the parents do not believe that's good for the child, it is their decision whether it's not good. Not the
Mike, I want to underscore that. There's a meme that's flying around. It's not a meme. It's actually a person's picture. It's this beautiful 20-something-year-old girl who's got a picture of herself in her beautiful sundress. She's sitting there just posing, like girls do sometimes. And it's next to a picture of her in 7th grade in her football uniform. She played football. And the commentary she gave here was, I was the ultimate tomboy. I liked hitting. I liked playing hard. I liked playing with the boys. I liked tackling and so on and so forth. And then the crux, I'm paraphrasing this, of course, the crux of it was, thank you, Mom and Dad, for not forcing me to change my hormones or something like that. Thank you for letting me be what I was in the phase that I am. And look what I am now. I'm obviously a beautiful girl. Tomboys don't deserve to be chemically altered.
No. I had one.
Boys with effeminate traits don't deserve to be chemically altered and then referred for surgery to become lifelong doctor's patients. Lifelong doctor's patients, which is what these people are. And parents, you're right, Mike. Parents have a right to say, no, not only am I not letting that happen to my kid, I'm not letting my kid get exposed to this crap. If you got drag queens in the public library or the school library, or if you've got books on the shelves there that teach my kids, gay or trans or even any kind of sex, when we're talking about young kids in particular, even if it's straight sex, kids are too young for that stuff. You start pushing sexuality and sexual orientation and sexualization on children, you're going to answer me. And I'm not a dad. I'm not a dad of a young kid anymore. But someday, God willing, I'll be a grandfather, and you better believe I'll be their worst freaking nightmare.
No, it's. I grew up in a household with a mother that was ultra Catholic. My father was ultra into sports, and he practiced our religion, but it was on my mother's mind constantly. And it shaped me in a certain way. And, I think that I remember in maybe 7th grade or something, they had this big event at Parma Park School, and they were going to talk about the birds and the bees for the first time with us. It was only boys going, and I guess they did it with girls too, ultimately. But I remember I kind of felt left out because I didn't hear about it, and I didn't. And my dad wasn't going to take me like the other dads were going to do. And I told my mom, and I said, "Geez, I feel kind of bummed out. Everybody else is going, and we're not going." She didn't even know about it, but when she found out about it, she said, I don't know about this, but I'm going to get your dad to come home and do it. We went. We never talked about it again. It just wasn't, our sexual preferences or our sexual thoughts were not discussed in our family home. And and I went through my childhood like that, and I've got a wonderful family life and a wonderful wife and 5 great kids, and I did just fine. And now we're saying that they're supposed to talk about that in school, and I find it completely and totally unacceptable. I don't think they have to learn anything other than what the parts of the body are, like we did in health class.
Yeah, anatomy. We all had to take anatomy, right? Yeah.
Yep. There's no opinion about what you should be or how you should behave. That's up to the parents, and that conversation should be had by the parents. We are not going to let these people indoctrinate our children, and I'm going to fight it to the day I have the big one.
Mike, before you go, and thank you for doing Talking Smack with us, Mike Gibbons. We really appreciate it, and we're going to stay in touch with you because you've got a very important role. I want to remind everybody what I'm tasking you and others with. See the guy behind me there? Everybody see that?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, for those who don't know, that's Jason Stevens. He and 21 other trans Dems sold out the state to Democrats, and I want to know what you're going to do about that going forward. We will continue to talk with you about that. But the last question I have for you, Mike Gibbons, is probably the hardest one for me to ask, and the hardest one I'm going to ask you to answer of all of the conversations we've had. We've hit some heavy stuff already. You ready for it?
Yep.
Is Ignatius ever going to beat Eds again?
That's
I know this would be the hardest question for you.
We're very sensitive people at Ignatius.
You're not used to losing. That's why you're sensitive.
That's why I brought this up. But they're not used to winning either when they play the green and gold anymore. So,
well, I mean, it's been a few years, but I had sons that beat them every year they played. And it goes in phases. And, I have to tell you, I don't know who the hell was going to beat St. Ed's this year. Their line, I don't know if you know this, their offensive line is 313 pounds.
Massive.
With 4 D1 scholarships on that line.
But wasn't there a time when Ignatius averaged 313 across the front?
Yeah.
Right?
And we had the same thing. And it goes in phases. And we kind of go up and down and up and down. We still have 11 state championships to show for it. And Chuck Kyle's gone now. I think he'll still be hanging around to some degree. They put together a pretty good group of guys. I've got a couple of relatives coaching there, and they've got Charles Bentley back. He's handling the offensive line now. People are, they may have been asking that question too, and they're getting involved. And we're ready to go. And I have to tell you, I have a grandson that no matter what happens, they're going to win the state championship because this guy's going to be the quarterback. And
wow,
Aaron Shea's son. He's only 11 years old, but he's
he's a stud in the making, I'm sure.
He's a head and a half taller than everybody else. And my daughter was the captain of her D1 soccer team at Lehigh, and he's got pretty good genetics.
It sounds like it.
And I think maybe
not to mention Grandpa Mike.
Yeah. Well, actually, great. You can skip my generation. We can go back to my dad. He was the real thing. But no, it's
thanks for answering the tough one, Mike. I knew that was going to be a little painful for you there.
I don't know if it'll be next year because they have a lot of those guys back, but we've got some pretty good guys coming up. So,
Mike Gibbons, thank you.
Thank you. Good talking to you guys, and let's fight the battle.
You got it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
See you.
All right. Thank you so much to Mr. Gibbons. A lot of ground, Jack, and we only have a couple of minutes left here, so I don't think we can do much of a retrospective, but if you want to close it out, fire away.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about, I'm going to go back to this whole coup of 22 thing. We uncovered what was going on before it happened, and then we reported on it in depth after it happened. And we really pulled out a lot of those red herring arguments like, hey, Derek Marin isn't going to be a uniter. He's not going to be organized. He's not going to be a leader. And he didn't call me, all of these things. And, you talked to Mike Gibbons a little bit about censures and what's going on. Well, the Cuyahoga County Republican Party, they attempted to censure Tom Patton, State Representative Tom Patton, last week, and that got kicked over to the disciplinary committee, which my understanding is they have 8 weeks, and then they'll report back with findings and a recommendation for the entire body. But here's the problem for me with people like Tom Patton. I've asked him specifically, why did you vote for Stevens? And, he really just kind of hemmed and hawed around about it and said, if you really want the answer, come up to Cleveland and meet me and talk to me. And I actually got a text that he sent another official. And in that text, he said on January 3rd, basically, Marin is bad for me because of right to work legislation, which basically means that, Tom Patton is beholden to labor unions. So, he threw a lot of those red herrings out there. So I gave him the opportunity. I said, you voted for Stevens due to right to work and prevailing wage bills. Hard to believe you didn't know that prior to January 3rd, that you were going to vote that way. He probably knew that on November 16th when Marin was elected. He said, those are your words, not mine. So again, this is my problem. If you're going to do it, own it, Tom Patton. I mean, at some point, you're going to have to face the fiddler, and I think that time's going to come really soon. So, very disappointed, very, very disappointed. If you're gonna have the balls to do something, have the balls to back it up and be authentic about it. And Tom Patton doesn't have the balls to do it.
Yeah, he doesn't, and dare I say, neither do any of the other 21. I know I'm painting with a broad brush here, but I don't care. If you had balls, you would not go back on your word. If you had balls, you would understand that when you voted and agreed on November 16th to unanimously support whoever won the caucus vote, and that turned out to be Derek Marin, and then you didn't, you've proven that you are a ballless wonder. And I'm sorry for the graphic terms and whatnot, but I mean, truthfully, I have no sympathy for these people. I will call them trans Dems until they stop being trans Dems. When they stop identifying as Dems by acting like Dems, voting with Dems, partnering with Dems, colluding with Dems, then I'll stop calling them trans Dems. But for now, they don't get to be called Republicans until they actually act like Republicans. Now, Jack, if Mike Gibbons is successful in working with these people through the PAC and finding a way to flip them and getting them to go back to the conservative principles that they supposedly had when they were going to be supporting Derek Marin, and thus the slate of conservative legislation that we're all talking about, well, then maybe they can earn a different branding. But for now, they're trans Dems because that's how they identify by their actions, not by their words.
Well said. I didn't even think about that. That explains it all. He's a eunuch who is identifying as somebody with brass balls. I get it. Yeah. I get it.
Ballless wonder acting like he's got brass ones. There you go. All right. Hey, Jack, this was a good conversation. I'm glad you were able to get to Mr. Gibbons and get him on. Great conversation. I want to tell everybody as we wrap, if you got anything of value out of this conversation from Jack, from me, or from Mike, probably all from Mike, share this podcast with people you know. Copy the link, send it to people in your Facebook, your Twitter, your Truth Social, your Rumble, your whatever accounts that you've got. But share it to people with people that you know. Let them know we're here so that we can continue to grow this and do the work. Mike said it. Jack, we can reach an awful lot of people between what you do and what I do and what we do here. And that's what we have to do if we're going to turn this thing around and fix the massive mess they have made of our state. So that's what Talkin' Smack is all about. So hopefully people share it and support it so we can make that happen.
Amen, brother.
Thanks, everybody. This has been Talkin' Smack. I'm Bob.
And I'm Jack.
And we'll see you next time.